Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the world of introverts.
We are. We're using Jenn Granneman's fantastic book, The Secret Lives of Introverts. It's our main guide here.
Right, it's packed with stories, science, lots to unpack. And our mission today.
Well, it's really to boil down the key ideas, help you understand what introversion actually is, especially in a world that often seems built for extroverts.
And maybe bust a few myths along the way, spark some aha moments.
Exactly, without getting totally bogged down in every single detail, just the core stuff.
Okay, so let's start right there. What is introversion fundamentally? Because I think there's a lot of confusion.
That's a great place to start. Granneman is really clear. It's a temperament, something you're kind of born with, shaping how you interact with the world.
So not the same as personality.
No, personality develops more over time through experiences. Temperament is more foundational. And get this, introverts make up like 30 to 50% of people.
Wow, that's a lot more than people might think.
It really is.
So what are some clues? How might someone listening, figure out if they lean that way?
The book gives quite a few indicators. A big one is feeling lonelier in a big crowd than when you're actually alone.
Interesting. So it's not about hating people.
Not at all. It's more about the energy drain from lots of interaction. Networking can feel like acting, like faking it.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Or maybe even told you're too intense. Often that just means you dislike superficial small talk.
Right. You want to get to the real conversation.
Exactly. Parties aren't usually for meeting new people. And then there's the big one. She talks about the introvert hangover.
Okay, hang on. We have to circle back to the introvert hangover. That sounds intriguing. But first, any other signs?
Well, yeah. The ability to concentrate deeply for long periods on things you care about. Having a rich inner world, living in your head a lot.
Like daydreaming or processing things internally?
Yes. Enjoying people watching, being a good listener. Preferring a small circle of close friends.
Right.
Not getting that same kind of high from the environment that extroverts might. Sometimes seeming like an old soul because of that deep processing.
And needing to balance social time with alone time.
Absolutely crucial. That alternating pattern is key. She also has this quick perfect day test.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Basically, if your ideal day involves low-key stuff, maybe alone or with just one or two close people, probably leaning introvert.
And if it's a big party or lots of activity with tons of people?
Then you're likely more towards the extrovert end. But it's important, she stresses, this is a spectrum. Nobody is 100% one or the other.
Right, it's not a strict box. Okay, that makes sense. What about the science? Is this just like a preference or is there something deeper?
Oh, there's definitely something deeper. Granneman dives into the neuroscience, particularly dopamine.
The reward chemical.
Exactly, the brain's pleasure and reward system. It seems introverts have a less active dopamine reward pathway compared to extroverts.
Less active. So what does that mean in practice?
It means things that give extroverts a buzz, like big social events, novelty, taking risks. They don't trigger the same level of excitement or reward anticipation in introverts.
So that explains why a loud party might feel overwhelming or draining rather than energizing for an introvert.
Precisely. They're just not as driven by those external dopamine hits. It's more about how their brains are wired.
Wow. So it's really innate then, from birth.
Largely, yes. The book really emphasizes that it's encoded in your DNA. There are studies on babies,
Babies. How do they test that?
Well, they look at reactions to new stimuli. Some babies are pretty chill, behaviorally uninhibited. Others react really strongly to anything new.
And that predicts later temperament.
It suggests a biological basis, yeah. And Granneman includes these really relatable stories of introverted childhoods.
Like what?
Like Richard, who just loved books and being alone, or Nicole, always playing quietly by herself. Lori, who's just genuinely happier on her own, even as a little kid.
That's fascinating. It shows up so early.
It really does seem to.
Okay, so given it's this fundamental trait, and maybe often misunderstood, let's talk misconceptions. What are the big ones Granneman tackles?
Oh, there are so many. A huge one is that introversion is just rudeness or being antisocial.
Right, like if you need time alone, you must not like people.
Yeah, exactly. And she completely debunks that. It's not about disliking people. It's about needing solitude to recharge.
Yeah.
Introverts enjoy socializing, just maybe differently.
How so? Like what kind of socializing?
Maybe a hike alone or with one friend, a quiet dinner, browsing an empty mall.
Yeah.
It's about the intensity and scale of the interaction, not the interaction itself.
That makes sense. Lower stimulation. What else gets mistaken?
The idea that introverts lack passion. That's another big one.
Because maybe they're not shouting it from the rooftops.
Pretty much. Granneman says they express passion differently, maybe through quiet activism, journaling, creating art. Even just thoughtful silence can be passionate.
It's internal intensity again.
Yes. She shares a story from Leanne Chapman about feeling excitement really deeply, but not showing it much outwardly.
Okay. And the classic mix-up. Introversion versus shyness.
Ah, yes, crucial difference. Shyness is the fear of negative social judgment. Introversion is a preference for quieter, low-key environments.
So you can be an introvert who isn't shy?
Absolutely. Or you can be a shy extrovert even. Virginia's example in the book, Loving Saturday Nights at Home instead of parties. That's preference, not fear.
Got it. Any other myths mentioned?
Well, the chapter titles themselves hint at them. Introverts hate people. They make bad leaders. They don't know how to have fun.
Yeah.
All things she pushes back against.
So important to clear those up. Okay, let's circle back to that introvert hangover. It sounds more serious than just being tired.
It really is. Granneman describes it as this real feeling of depletion. Sluggish, drained, almost like a physical hangover after too much socializing.
Like your brain just shuts down.
Kind of. Difficulty forming sentences, craving quiet and darkness. It's an overwhelming need to just be alone to recover.
Wow. Does she share any personal examples of that?
Yeah, she talks about a college trip where she felt totally overstimulated and kind of left out. She had to step away, be alone for a bit.
And that helped.
It did. It let her recharge so she could actually enjoy the later activities. There's also Rachel Ginder's story about Oktoberfest.
Oktoberfest sounds like peak stimulation.
Exactly. Sensory overload central. She basically had to leave for her own sanity, her mental well-being. It highlights the tough choices introverts often face.
Like, do I push myself and risk burnout or stay home and potentially miss out?
That's the dilemma right there.
Yeah.
Balancing new experiences with managing their energy.
So if introverts approach socializing differently to avoid that hangover,
Yeah.
what does that look like? How do they connect?
They tend to value depth over breadth. Meaningful conversations with a few close friends usually feel much more rewarding than, say, small talk with 50 acquaintances.
Quality over quantity.
Definitely. But interestingly, the book also notes that some socializing is generally good for happiness, even for introverts.
Really, even if it takes energy.
Yeah. Research apparently shows a bit of a happiness bump after acting outgoing, regardless of your temperament. So it's about finding the right balance, not total isolation.
Okay, so for people who aren't introverts but have them in their lives,
Yeah.
what's the advice? How can they be good friends?
Key things are understand and respect that need for alone time to recharge. Don't take it personally.
Right. It's not about you.
Exactly. Don't push them into constant social events. Appreciate their listening skills. They're often really good listeners. And give them space to open up. Don't pressure them.
Good advice. And for introverts wanting to make more connections.
Focus on people you already know, maybe a little bit. Join smaller groups based on interests you genuinely share.
Like a book club or a hiking group.
Perfect examples. Initiate conversations with open-ended questions. Instead of, how are you? Try, what's your story?
Ooh, I like that. It invites more depth.
It does. Be curious. Ask why questions, not just what. And be willing to share a bit about yourself, too. It has to be reciprocal.
Makes sense. It's about finding authentic ways to connect.
Okay, let's shift to solitude. We know it's crucial for recharging, but is there more to it?
Definitely. It's not just about recovering from socializing. For introverts, solitude is often where they feel most themselves, where they can lower stimulation levels and just be.
Is there brain science behind that, too?
There is. Granneman mentions a study looking at the P300 brain response that's like how your brain reacts to sudden changes or significant things in the environment.
Okay.
Introverts apparently showed a lower P300 response, specifically to faces compared to extroverts.
What does that suggest?
It might mean their brains aren't as inherently wired to seek out social interaction for stimulation in the same way. Faces just aren't as salient, maybe?
Fascinating. So it reinforces that solitude isn't just tolerance, it's almost a preferred state for processing and being.
Exactly. And this ties into the danger of overobligation. Saying yes to everything can be disastrous for an introvert's energy.
Learning to say no becomes a critical skill, absolutely essential. Granneman shares a story from Jay, who just kept scheduling things until she basically crashed and realized she had to prioritize.
Does she offer tips on how to say no? Because that can be hard.
She does. Things like, Starting with a compliment, giving a brief, honest reason, no need for long excuses, showing empathy, and maybe suggesting an alternative if possible.
Like, I can't make that big party, but maybe we could grab coffee next week.
Perfect. It's about protecting your energy gracefully.
Okay, let's talk relationships, romantic ones. How does introversion play out there? Does solitude ever become loneliness?
It can, and that's an important distinction Granneman makes. While solitude is needed, chronic loneliness isn't healthy for anyone, introvert or extrovert. We all need some meaningful connection.
So how do introverts navigate dating? It often involves a lot of social interaction.
You can be challenging. These can feel really overstimulating sometimes. The key is often finding a partner who gets it, someone who understands and respects the need for quiet time.
Someone who doesn't need constant chatter.
Exactly. Or constant doing. Someone who values calm and doesn't see silence as awkwardness.
What qualities do introverts typically look for, according to the book?
Good listener comes up a lot. Calmness, intelligence, kindness, shared values.
Respect for boundaries seems huge, too.
Absolutely. Someone who enjoys quiet time with them, who is authentic, and who appreciates deep conversation over small talk. Granneman uses this lovely thumbprint analogy.
Thumbprint.
Yeah, like finding someone who just feels uniquely right, like your thumbprint matches theirs. It's a very personal fit.
That's nice. Any tips for introverts on dates?
Be yourself, definitely. Don't try to fake being an extrovert. Listen actively to find out what interests them. Talk about things that genuinely make you interesting.
And maybe push the comfort zone just a tiny bit.
Gently, yes, manageably.
Yeah.
There's a great story about Alex connecting with an extrovert, actually.
Oh, how did that work?
The extrovert partner kind of helped bridge the gap in social situations, made things easier, understood Alex's needs. It shows how different temperaments can complement each other.
So introvert-extrovert pairings can work well.
They can. The benefit is maybe being gently pulled out of your shell sometimes. The challenge is the introvert really needs to communicate their needs clearly.
And introvert couples.
The big advantage there is often that built-in mutual understanding. You both get the need for space and quiet without much explanation.
Makes sense. What about advice for extroverts loving an introvert?
Respect the space. Understand they process things internally. Silence doesn't mean they're not thinking or feeling. Value those deep talks. And please, don't force them into the spotlight if they hate it.
Real practical advice. Okay, let's switch gears to work and career. What are the common workplace struggles for introverts?
Oh, plenty. Open-plan offices are often a nightmare, constant noise and distraction.
I can imagine.
The expectation of constant team socializing, happy hours, being seen as not a team player just because you need quiet time to focus.
The pressure to perform extroversion.
Exactly. That feeling of having to fake it, which is exhausting. And the job interview itself, often not designed to showcase an introvert's strengths.
Why not? Too much pressure and on-the-spot performance.
Pretty much. The overstimulation can make it hard to think clearly and articulate their best qualities, which might be more reflective and thoughtful.
So how can introverts navigate interviews better?
Preparation is key. Really think through answers, practice articulating them, highlight strengths like focus, deep thinking, listening skills, and maybe be upfront about needing reflection time in your work style.
Honesty about preferences. What about networking? That sounds like an introvert's nightmare.
It can be draining, yeah, but sometimes necessary. The advice is quality over quantity again. Focus on making a few genuine connections.
Not trying to work the whole room.
Right. Have a couple of go-to questions ready. Use those listening skills people love to be heard. And just practice. It gets slightly easier.
How can they get noticed at work without being the loudest person?
Build strong one-on-one relationships with colleagues and managers. Contribute thoughtfully in meetings, maybe not always first, but make it count.
Prepare points beforehand.
That can help. Don't wait for the perfect wording. Sometimes good enough is needed. Maybe raise your voice volume just slightly in group discussions so you're heard. And learn to buy time if put on the spot.
That's an interesting point. Let me think about that for a second.
Exactly. Ultimately, though, the book stresses finding meaningful work. Work that aligns with your values, not just about climbing a ladder or getting a paycheck. Purpose matters a lot.
That feels like a really important point. Finding that internal alignment. Okay, let's go inside the introvert's inner world, as Granneman puts it. What's it like in there?
She describes it as this incredibly rich, vibrant space. It's where reflection happens, where information and emotions get processed deeply. It's for daydreaming, creativity.
Exploring ideas.
Yes, Abstract thoughts, feelings. She uses metaphors like a private movie theater, a calm sanctuary, even a sort of mental salvage yard where ideas get collected and tinkered with.
A salvage yard for ideas? I like that.
Hmm.
And the link to creativity is that strong.
Very strong, according to the book. A lot of it comes down to that ability and even enjoyment of working alone.
Solitude fosters deep work.
Exactly. It allows for that intense focus and exploration needed for innovation. History is full of creatives who needed solitude. While interacting can spark ideas, the deep creative work often happens alone, inside that inner world.
Makes sense. What about the resting introvert face? Is that related to the inner world?
Yes, that focused, thoughtful look when you're deep in thought internally.
But everyone else thinks you're bored or mad.
Precisely. It's just intense internal processing being misinterpreted. But that inner world isn't always rosy, right? There's overthinking.
Ah, the flip side, the constant mental chatter.
Yes, that nonstop processing can definitely spiral into anxiety, sometimes depression, getting stuck and not taking action, even messing with sleep.
Does she offer ways to manage that?
Yeah, basic but useful stuff. Like, first, just notice when you're doing it. Try to step back and put things in perspective. Shift your focus deliberately onto something else.
Challenge the negative thoughts.
Yes, actively question if those anxious thoughts are really true or helpful. It takes practice, but it's about not letting the inner world become a trap.
Okay, that brings us towards the end. The final message seems to be about working with your introversion, not against it.
Exactly. It's really empowering. She tells a story about Dave, an extrovert actually, who succeeded by kind of flaunting his weaknesses, meaning he focused on his strengths and found environments that fit him, rather than trying to be someone he wasn't.
So apply that logic to introverts. Lean into your strengths.
Yes. And the crucial message is, your needs as an introvert are just as important as anyone else's needs, period.
That sounds simple, but probably hard to internalize sometimes.
Very. She shares Lauren Sapala's story about needing a scent-free workspace. Realizing it was okay to ask for that her need was valid, was a huge step.
Why is it so hard for introverts to speak up for those needs?
Often past experiences, maybe being dismissed or told they're being difficult, and that tendency to prioritize others' comfort over their own.
But the book argues that speaking your truth is powerful.
Immensely powerful. It can actually lead to more respect when you value yourself and your needs clearly. It's also about gently pushing your comfort zone sometimes.
Not drastically changing, but small steps.
Right. Like Susan learning to handle phone calls or Jeremy Messersmith dealing with stage fright. Small, manageable steps towards things that matter to you.
So the final takeaway is?
It's simple but profound. Be as you are. Give yourself permission. Permission for quiet. Permission to be authentically you, the introvert.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive on the secret lives of introverts. We've really seen that introversion is this core temperament, right? Not shyness.
Definitely. And it comes with its own unique strengths and, yes, challenges in a world often geared towards extroversion.
We looked at the science, that dopamine difference, why solitude energizes and too much stimulation drains. We busted some big myths.
Like introverts being rude or lacking passion.
Exactly. And we explored how introverts navigate social life, relationships, work, finding ways that honor their energy.
And ultimately, that key idea, understanding and working with your introversion, honoring that inner world, is really the path to thriving.
So the big thought to leave you, our listener, with.
Yeah, take a minute and think about your own life, your environments, your interactions. Are they actually aligned with your natural energy flow?
Whether you identify as an introvert, or maybe now you understand the introverts around you a bit better.
What small changes could you make? Just one tiny adjustment to better honor your own temperament or support someone else's?
That's a powerful question. And if this whole conversation has sparked something in you,
We definitely recommend reading the whole book, The Secret Lives of Introverts by Jenn Granneman. There's so much more in there.
more stories, more advice. She even talks about 4 different types of introverts, which adds another layer of nuance.
It really does. So think about what resonated, what questions you still have. This is just scratching the surface.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the rich inner world of introverts.